Walk into any kitchen supply store today and you will find an entire wall of non-stick pans coated in chemicals you cannot pronounce. Baking dishes made from materials that crack if you look at them sideways, and plastic storage containers whose lids vanish into a dimension no scientist has ever mapped. We spend more money on household products now than any generation in American history. And somehow, the things we buy last about a third as long as the ones our parents picked up at Sears in 1974 without reading a single online review. The 1970s got a lot of things wrong. The carpet colors alone should have been a federal crime. But the household products that filled those avocado green kitchens and harvest gold bathrooms were built on a completely different philosophy. These are 20 of them. Number 20. The original Corningware casserole dish. If your mother had a white dish with little blue cornflowers on the side, she had one of the most indestructible pieces of cookware ever manufactured. The original Corningware was made from pyroceram, a glass-ceramic hybrid that was actually developed for the nose cones of guided missiles in the 1950s. A scientist at Corning Glass Works named Donald Stookey discovered it by accident when he overheated a piece of glass in his lab to 900 degrees instead of the intended 600. The glass turned milky white, and when he tried to remove it with tongs, it slipped and hit the laboratory floor. Instead of shattering, it bounced. That pyroceram dish could go from freezer to stovetop to oven to table to dishwasher without blinking. It could withstand thermal shock of over 840 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning you could pour ice water into a dish fresh from a hot oven and nothing would happen. When Corning sold the brand in the late 1990s, the new owners quietly switched from pyroceram to ordinary stoneware. The dishes looked almost identical, same shapes, same white finish, even the same blue cornflower design. But the stoneware version could not go on the stovetop, could not handle rapid temperature changes, and chipped if you bumped it against the counter. An original Corningware dish from the 1970s outperforms anything currently on the shelf at any price. More than 750 million pieces were manufactured during the pyroceram era, and an astonishing number of them are still in active daily use, passed from mothers to daughters, along with the casserole recipes written on index cards. The stoneware replacement from China struggles to survive its second Thanksgiving, and the original just keeps cooking, decade after decade, as if the missile engineers who inspired it would accept nothing less. Number 19. The vintage Pyrex mixing bowl. Pyrex used to be made from borosilicate glass. That formula resists thermal shock roughly 3 times better than what they use now. You could move it from a hot oven to a cold counter without thinking twice. In the 1980s, American manufacturers switched Pyrex to tempered soda-lime glass because it was cheaper to produce. The new formula is slightly stronger if you drop it on the floor, but it handles heat changes far worse. That is why modern Pyrex dishes occasionally shatter inside the oven in a way that would have been nearly impossible with the old borosilicate formula. The vintage pieces, many of them decorated in those iconic orange, green, and turquoise patterns, are now collector items partly for their beauty, but mostly because they still work better than anything you can buy new. A Pyrex bowl from 1972 goes from freezer to oven without complaint. A Pyrex bowl from 2024 comes with a warning label telling you not to try it. The glass looks the same on the shelf. The chemistry inside could not be more different. Cast iron cookware in the 1970s and earlier was finished differently than what you find today. After the skillet was cast in a sand mold, manufacturers like Griswold and Wagner spent additional hours machining the cooking surface until it was nearly glass smooth. That finish allowed seasoning to bond evenly and created a natural non-stick surface that improved with every meal. At some point in the 1960s and 70s, most manufacturers stopped machining the surface to save time and money. A modern Lodge skillet arrives with a rough, pebbly texture straight out of the mold. Lodge acknowledges this on their website and suggests the surface will smooth out after a few years of regular use. A few years to reach a baseline that a 1970s skillet had from day one. Vintage cast iron from Griswold or Wagner is lighter, smoother, and more responsive to heat than nearly anything new on the market. A pan found at a flea market for $5 will outperform a $100 modern alternative on every measure that actually matters in cooking. The irony is that cast iron is one of the few materials that genuinely gets better with age. A skillet that started smooth 50 years ago has had 5 decades of seasoning built into its surface. No factory can replicate that. No marketing campaign can shortcut it. Number 17. The glass coffee percolator. Before drip machines and single-serve pods took over, the standard way to make coffee in America was a stovetop percolator. Water in the bottom was heated, rose through a tube, and cycled repeatedly over ground coffee in a basket at the top. The result was a strong, full-bodied cup that tasted substantially different from what a drip machine produces. Drip machines run water over the grounds once, which is faster but extracts less flavor. A percolator cycles the water multiple times, pulling more oil and depth from the same beans. People who grew up with percolator coffee and switched to drip often describe it as the moment coffee stopped tasting like coffee. The glass models had an additional advantage. You could watch the coffee darken in real time and know exactly when it hit the strength you wanted. No timer, no beeping, just a visual cue that worked for decades. A single pod today costs 50 to 75 cents and produces a cup that most serious coffee drinkers would describe as adequate at best. A percolator makes the same amount of coffee for about a dime worth of beans, and the taste is not even a close comparison. The pod machine has its place. Nobody disputes the convenience. But the coffee itself lost something real when the percolator left the stove. Number 16. The Sunbeam Mixmaster. The Sunbeam Mixmaster dominated American kitchens from the 1950s through the late 1970s, long before KitchenAid became the default. These machines were built with heavy-duty motors, metal gears, and steel housings, and they could run for decades without failure. Many families use the same Mixmaster for 30 or 40 years. Modern mixers in the same price range use plastic gears and lighter motors that work well for a few years until something cracks or the motor overheats. A 1973 Mixmaster sitting in someone's garage would probably outlast a brand new mixer bought tomorrow. Number 15. The metal ice cube tray with a pull lever. Before plastic trays and automatic ice makers, most American freezers held anodized aluminum trays with a spring-loaded lever on top. You pulled the lever, a divider plate flexed, and every cube popped loose at once. Clean, fast, no twisting, no banging, no cracking. The trays were anodized aluminum. They did not absorb odors, did not stain, and did not wear out. Families used the same metal trays for decades. Modern plastic trays warp in the freezer, absorb smells from whatever is stored nearby, crack at the corners after a few months, and require you to wrestle with them to free a single cube. The metal tray solved all of those problems in a single elegant design, and we abandoned it for something objectively worse. Number 14. The rotary egg beater. Before electric hand mixers became cheap enough for every drawer, the standard tool for whipping eggs was a hand-cranked rotary beater. 2 interlocking metal whisks, driven by a simple gear linked to a handle you turned by hand. It was completely silent. It never overheated. It could not short-circuit. It gave you total control over speed. It cost almost nothing, and it lasted essentially forever because there was nothing inside that could break. The electric hand mixer that replaced it has a motor that typically burns out within 5 years, a cord that tangles, and beaters that eject when the release mechanism wears. If you are finding value in rediscovering these older products, take a moment and hit subscribe. Every week this channel looks at the things our parents and grandparents got right, the kind of wisdom that still works if we are willing to pick it up again. Number 13. The Revere Ware Copper Bottom Saucepan. Revere Ware's signature piece was a stainless steel saucepan with a solid copper disc bonded to the bottom. The copper was not decorative. Copper conducts heat roughly 2 times as efficiently as stainless steel and 5 times as efficiently as cast aluminum, which meant fewer hot spots, fewer scorched sauces, and better control at low temperatures. The original pieces were made in American factories with heavier gauge steel and a thicker copper layer than the versions that came later. When production moved overseas, the copper got thinner, the steel got lighter, and the performance declined. A Revere Ware saucepan from the 1970s with the original thick copper bottom outperforms most modern stainless steel cookware that sells for 5 times the price. Number 12. The Corelle Livingware Dinner Plate. Corelle plates were introduced in 1970 by the same parent company that made Pyrex and Corningware. They were made from Vitrel, a 3-layer laminated glass that was lighter than ceramic, thinner than stoneware, and nearly impossible to chip under normal use. A Corelle plate from the 1970s weighs about half as much as a standard dinner plate and stacks tighter in the cabinet. The original patterns, Butterfly Gold, Spring Blossom Green, and Old Town Blue, are still in daily use in thousands of American households because the plates simply refuse to break. Stoneware chips if you look at it too hard. A set of Corelle from 1974 is still feeding families every single night. Number 11. The Hand-Cranked Food Mill. The food mill pressed soft food through a perforated disc while catching seeds, skins, and pulp on top. No electricity, no special blades. A tomato sauce run through a food mill has a velvety smoothness that no blender can replicate because blenders incorporate air and pulverize seeds that add bitterness. The food mill separates mechanically and gently. The average kitchen abandoned it in the 1980s for electric alternatives that are louder, harder to clean, and produce an inferior result for the specific task. Number 10. The Cotton Flour Sack Dish Towel. Dish towels in the 1970s were made from flour sack fabric or tightly woven linen that were absorbent on contact, dried quickly when hung, and became softer with every wash. A single flour sack towel could dry an entire sink of dishes without becoming saturated. Modern dish towels are often terry cloth or synthetic blends that push water around, stay damp for hours, develop a smell after 3 uses, and leave lint on every glass they touch. A flour sack towel costs almost nothing and is more durable than any microfiber alternative on the shelf. Number 9. The Manual Carpet Sweeper. Brands like Bissell made hand-powered sweepers with no motor, no cord, no battery, and no filter. You pushed it across the carpet, and rotating brushes driven by the wheel motion swept crumbs into a built-in pan. It was silent, weighed almost nothing, and took 60 seconds to clean the kitchen floor after dinner. Today, that job requires a full vacuum or a $300 robot that gets stuck under the couch every 3rd run. Number 8 is the wooden-handled vegetable peeler. Peelers in the 1970s used carbon steel blades fitted into wooden or solid metal handles. They were sharp out of the package, sharp for years, and could peel a potato in about 10 seconds. Modern peelers are stamped from thin steel and set in plastic handles that flex under pressure. They are sold in multi-packs because the manufacturer expects you to throw them away when they dull. The old peelers could be resharpened on the same whetstone used for kitchen knives, and they lasted a decade. Children in the 1970s carried embossed steel lunchboxes with a domed top and a thermos inside. The metal did not absorb odors, did not stain, did not crack on the cafeteria floor, and still looked presentable enough to use again in September. The clasp was a solid piece of hardware that lasted the entire school year and well beyond. At the end of June, you wiped it down and put it on the shelf, and in September, it was ready to go again. Plastic lunchboxes replaced them in the early 1980s. The decline was immediate. Plastic absorbs smells no soap can remove, cracks at the hinges, and loses its clasps within months. Every August, parents stand in the back-to-school aisle buying the same replacement their child already destroyed last year. A metal lunchbox from 1976 could have lasted an entire childhood. The plastic replacement barely survives a semester. Number 6. The wax paper sandwich wrap. Before plastic bags, lunches were wrapped in wax paper. The coating kept bread from going soggy while allowing enough airflow to prevent the sweaty texture that plastic creates. A sandwich wrapped in wax paper at 7 in the morning still tasted right at noon. It was biodegradable, cost pennies, and for the specific job of keeping a sandwich fresh for a few hours, it was measurably better than a Ziploc bag. Number 5. The cast aluminum bundt pan. Nordic Ware's original bundt pans were cast from heavy-gauge aluminum, and they distributed heat evenly across the entire surface. A cake browned uniformly and released cleanly. Modern bundt pans are often thinner, stamped steel with non-stick coatings that chip and degrade after a few years. A vintage pan weighs nearly twice as much as a discount version, and that weight is the entire story. Heavier pan, more even heat, better cake. The physics have not changed. The manufacturing standards just stopped keeping up. Number 4. The stainless steel thermos with a glass liner. The thermos your father carried to work in the 1970s had a glass vacuum liner sealed inside a steel shell. The glass vacuum technology kept coffee genuinely hot for 12 hours. Modern thermoses replaced the glass with a double-walled stainless steel vacuum liner. The steel liner is more durable if dropped, but it retains heat measurably less efficiently, and it reacts with acidic liquids like coffee over time, adding a faint metallic taste that glass never produced. Glass is simply a better insulator than steel. In the 1970s, plenty of suburban lawns were still cut with a push reel mower. No engine, no fuel, no cord. A reel blade shears grass with a clean scissor cut, while a rotary blade tears it. The difference shows up within a week. Reel-cut grass heals faster, stays greener, and resists disease. The reel mower was silent, produced no emissions, weighed under 20 pounds, and forced the operator to get exercise nobody thought of as exercise. Gas mowers weigh 60 to 80 pounds, require annual maintenance, and pollute at rates that would embarrass a small car. For a quarter-acre suburban lot, the gas mower was never actually an improvement. Number 2, the stovetop pressure cooker with a jiggle-top weight. The 1970s pressure cooker was a heavy aluminum pot with a locking lid and a small weighted valve on top that rocked back and forth as steam built inside. You adjusted the heat until the weight jiggled gently, and that was your signal. The food cooked at roughly 250 degrees Fahrenheit. A beef stew that took 3 hours in a regular pot finished in 35 minutes. Dried beans were tender in 20 minutes without soaking. Modern electric pressure cookers use digital sensors to do essentially the same thing, but they are slower to reach pressure, more fragile, and filled with electronics that fail within a few years. The 1970s version has one moving part and one replacement component, a rubber gasket that costs $3. Everything else lasts forever. And number 1, the plain white bar of soap. In the 1970s, the bathroom sink held a bar of Ivory or Dove. It cost about 25 cents. It lasted a family of 4, 2 to 3 weeks. It contained ingredients a person with an 8th grade education could pronounce, and it worked. Today, the average household buys liquid hand soap, foaming soap, body wash, hand sanitizer, and antibacterial kitchen soap, each in its own plastic bottle, costing $3 to $8. Each one goes to a landfill. Study after study confirms that plain soap and water removes germs just as effectively as any antibacterial formula. The bar of soap was not abandoned because it stopped working. It was abandoned because someone figured out how to sell the same thing for 10 times the price in a fancier bottle. And that, in a single sentence, is the story of nearly everything on this list. The bar of soap was not glamorous. Neither was the cast iron skillet, the carpet sweeper, or the copper-bottom saucepan. None of these products had a marketing budget that could compete with what replaced them. What they had was something quieter and, in the long run, something more valuable. They worked, they lasted, and they did not ask you to buy them again every 18 months. Nearly every product on this list was replaced by something cheaper to manufacture, more expensive to buy, and shorter-lived. The replacements were not better products. They were better business models. Planned obsolescence, disposable pricing, and the slow migration from metal and glass to plastic and particle board transformed the American household from a place where you bought things once into a place where you replace things constantly. Your grandmother did not need a label maker to organize her kitchen. She needed a Corningware dish that could survive a thermal shock test designed for a missile nose cone, and she had one. The good news is that most of these products still exist. Cast iron skillets are still made. Manual carpet sweepers are still manufactured. Flour sack towels still cost a few dollars. Glass percolators show up at estate sales for pocket change. Engineering never went away. We just stopped looking for it. And maybe the real question is not whether these products were better, because the evidence on that is overwhelming. The real question is why we let them go so easily, why we traded glass for plastic, copper for aluminum, and machines that lasted a lifetime for machines designed to last just long enough to need replacing. The answer, of course, is that nobody made that trade on purpose. It happened one product at a time, one cheaper alternative at a time, until the entire kitchen had been swapped out without anyone noticing what was lost. If this video made you think about a kitchen tool from your own childhood, the kind of thing that seemed to last forever because it actually did, there is a video on screen right now about everyday habits from past generations that quietly disappeared without anyone noticing. You might recognize more of them than you expect.